What if I told you that the father of capitalism, Adam Smith, would hate the way we run our economy today? We've been told that greed is good and stock prices are everything. But in 1982, a single boring-sounding rule change turned the global economy into a giant shell game. We stopped building factories and started engineering balance sheets. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on how capitalism lost its soul and why your paycheck is staying flat while the stock market hits record highs. Let's get into it. In 1776, a Scottish philosopher named Adam Smith published a book that would change the world. He spoke of an invisible hand, a force that turned individual self-interest into collective prosperity. For over 2 centuries, that was the deal. You build a better steam engine, you hire 1,000 people, you make a profit, and society moves forward. But look at the world in 2026. Something feels off. We see companies worth trillions of dollars that don't seem to build anything new. We see record profits paired with mass layoffs. We see a global economy where financial engineering, the art of moving numbers around a spreadsheet, has become more profitable than actual engineering. When did capitalism become a dirty word? Is the system broken, or have we just lost the manual? Today, we're diving deep into the hollowing out of the global economy. We're looking at how share buybacks, short-termism, and the death of the real economy have stripped capitalism of its moral core. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your paycheck feels stagnant while the stock market hits all-time highs, and how we might actually fix it. To understand where we are, we have to go back to the man everyone quotes but few actually read, Adam Smith. Modern critics often paint Smith as a cold-hearted worshiper of greed. But Smith wasn't an economist. The field didn't even exist yet. He was a moral philosopher. Before he wrote The Wealth of Nations, he wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiments. Smith believed that humans are naturally self-serving, yes, but he also believed we have an innate sympathy for others. He argued that markets only work when they exist within a moral framework. In his mind, a baker doesn't sell you bread out of charity, he does it for profit. But to make that profit, he must provide a high-quality product at a fair price. That is a social contract. Crucially, Smith never even used the word capitalism. Ironically, that term was popularized later by its critics like Karl Marx. Smith saw commercial society as an instrument of moral order. So, where did it go wrong? For 200 years, the formula stayed relatively stable. 1. Capital goes into factories and innovation.
2. Factories create jobs and products. 3. Jobs create wealth for the community. But in the 1980s, a new religion took over: shareholder primacy. Led by economists like Milton Friedman, the mantra became, the only social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. Suddenly, the moral framework Smith insisted on was stripped away. The worker, the customer, and the community were kicked out of the boardroom. There was only one person left at the table: the shareholder. If you want to pinpoint the exact moment the moral core began to erode, look at 1982. Specifically, look at SEC Rule 10b-18. Before 1982, if a company used its profits to buy back its own shares to pump up the price, it was often considered market manipulation. It was illegal. It was seen as cheating the natural discovery of value. But under a wave of deregulation, the SEC created a safe harbor. They told companies, as long as you follow these basic rules, you can buy as much of your own stock as you want. At the same time, across the pond in the UK, the 1986 Big Bang deregulated the London Stock Exchange. The floodgates were open. This changed the psychology of the C-suite overnight. If you are a CEO and 80% of your compensation is tied to stock options, how do you get a raise? Option A, spend 10 years and $5 billion developing a revolutionary new technology that might fail. Option B, spend $5 billion buying back your own shares today, reducing the supply, and instantly watching the stock price jump. Guess which one they chose? Mournfully, this is what we call the hollowing of enterprise. We stopped investing in the real economy, the world of steel, software, and soul, and started investing in the paper economy. Let's look at the receipts. In 2018, S&P 500 companies received a massive tax cut. Ironically, the promise from politicians was that this money would trickle down into R&D and higher wages. The reality? 81% of that extra cash went to buybacks and dividends. Mournfully, only 4.6% went to research and development. Look at Apple. In 2024, they announced a $110 billion repurchase plan. Now, Apple is a titan of innovation, but $110 billion is more than the GDP of many countries. Imagine if that capital was deployed into radical new energy solutions or solving global supply chain issues. Instead, it vanishes into the brokerage accounts of institutional investors. Look at Delta Airlines. In 2018, they spent $5 billion on buybacks. Just a couple of years later, when the pandemic hit, the airline industry was begging for government bailouts because they had no cash reserves. They had engineered their balance sheets to be so lean for the sake of the stock price that they had no resilience left for a real-world crisis. Even energy firms, amidst a global climate crisis, are prioritizing buybacks over the transition to renewables. When extraction becomes more profitable than invention, the future is the first thing we sacrifice. This isn't just a business problem, it's a society problem. When a company prioritizes the shareholder over everyone else, the worker becomes a cost to be minimized rather than an asset to be cultivated. This is why, since the 1970s, worker productivity has skyrocketed while real wages have remained almost flat. The invisible hand is no longer lifting all boats, it's just bailing out the yachts. This erosion of the social contract is why capitalism has become a dirty word for younger generations. If the system doesn't offer a path to home ownership, stable employment, or a healthy planet, why should they support it? Adam Smith warned us about this. He said that a society where the greater part of the members are miserable and poor cannot be flourishing or happy. By stripping away the moral core, the idea that a business exists to serve a social purpose, we've created a system that is incredibly efficient at generating value, but incredibly poor at generating wealth. So, is it too late? Are we stuck in a loop of financial engineering until the system collapses? Not necessarily. In 2025 and 2026, we're seeing the rise of stakeholder capitalism and patient capital. What does that look like? 1. Redefining fiduciary duty. We're seeing a shift in the law, from the US to the EU, where CEOs are increasingly required to consider long-term systemic risks like climate change and the well-being of workers, not just the next quarterly dividend. 2. Taxing buybacks. In 2025 and 2026, the conversation has moved from if to how much. New regulations, like the final IRS rules on excise taxes, are sending a clear message. If a company wants to pump its stock instead of its people, they should pay a premium for that privilege. 3. Green industrial policy. Governments are finally steering hundreds of billions of dollars back into the real economy, building the future through clean energy, resilient infrastructure, and biotechnology. We need to move from scraping value to creating value. Profit and purpose aren't enemies, they're partners. Studies consistently show that companies committed to ESG, environmental, social, and governance standards, actually outperform their peers in the long run. Why? Because they're more resilient, they have loyal employees, they have trust. Building a business is not inherently evil. Creating wealth is a noble pursuit. But as Adam Smith knew 250 years ago, capitalism without a moral anchor is just a machine that eventually grinds itself to pieces. The question for 2026 isn't whether we should have capitalism or not. The question is, what kind of capitalism do we want? One that extracts or one that builds?